This is Fantology.
You may have heard of us.
All right, what is up, nerds? This is Josh with Fantology Podcast. I am joined today by Steven and Jake, and usually Steven is the one that has host duties, but today I get the pleasure of interviewing Steven and Jake about their recent appearance at Norwescon. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Recent convention. Yeah.
Yes. Norwescon, 47.
I
47
think there's
years of Norwescon, I believe.
yeah, 47, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Norwescon. I don't think there's a T. I think it's Norwescon.
Norwescon.
Is there a T?
I don't think there's a T.
Your badge is right behind you. Look at your badge and tell us if there's a T.
No T. No T.
No T.
No T.
No
Okay.
T.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. All right. Well, yeah, so I get to talk to you guys about it. This is one of our first times being on like a live in-person panel like this. So I thought that was kind of cool. I was bummed I couldn't attend, but I'm
I
excited
mean,
to hear
it's
about
it's
your
the
experience.
it's the first and only time that I have ever appeared on a panel like this. So it was a new experience.
Yeah,
It was
I think
my
we've done
first
some like internet-led panels and stuff on like guests on
true,
other shows and stuff. So I didn't know if we were,
Mm,
but not at a
considering,
convention.
but not at a
yeah.
convention.
Not
Yeah.
like physical space. This was my first time at a convention at all. So that was fun.
Did you come to Dragons? You didn't come to Dragonsdale at all with us. Yeah,
No,
that's right.
no,
Yeah,
I didn't get
yeah.
tickets.
Yeah. I mean,
For as
I've
nerdy.
only ever been to Dragonsteel and this, so it's not like
Middle
I'm
class
very
problems.
experienced. Not really experienced either, but we're starting to get deeper and deeper into the nerd culture here, right? Attending cons even, so I
Yeah.
I'm down for that. Yeah.
I'm kind of surprised we didn't attend any cons like in high school or anything. I
Mhm.
That wasn't really, I mean, we were all pretty nerdy in high school. That wasn't really on our radar at
Well,
all.
and they're pricey. Like the
They're
only ones
pricey.
you really
Yeah.
knew about were big ones. The only ones I
Yeah.
was aware about. I wasn't like
Yeah.
into like internet message
Yeah.
boards or communities like that in high school. So
I feel like if you're doing it in high school, you fully embraced being a nerd. You're not trying to be cool at all. You're just like, I'm a nerd. That's who I am. And I feel like when we were in high school, we were not at that level. We were still kind of, dancing around different groups and yeah,
we
I don't
weren't
know.
cool enough to fully embrace our nerdhood.
You,
correct.
Nerdhood.
you say that,
Nerddom.
Stephen, but I don't know if there's a nerdier group of people in our high school than we were.
I can think
Really.
of a few
They're
people for
different.
sure.
No,
They're like
there's
a few people, but I don't know of like a group of people that in general were nerdier than us.
But we hit it. We hit it so well. I
That's
don't know. We
true.
should talk to some people from high
well,
school.
I mean, yeah, we need to bring on
Yeah.
an impartial third party. I
Yeah.
think
We'd
that
ask
I think
Amber.
the key here, Josh, is that most who fully embrace being nerds, they may not be part of larger groups, maybe kind of smaller pods of
That's true.
Back
these.
in our day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which
Who
is one
knows
of the
how it is
many
nowadays?
reasons we had a
Yeah.
discussion about this episodes past in Yonder Your or whatever it's called, but about the fragmentation of interests. And that was one
Oh
thing that the
boy.
internet has brought us is more acceptance in your niche
Mhm.
likes. So
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe there's a lot more acceptance nowadays in high school. Something tells me that
All
kids
right.
are still,
oh yeah,
not
kids
mean
are
and not
savage.
understanding. And yeah,
Yeah.
so something tells
They'll
me
find
there's still
ways.
problems, but yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get to the pure nerdum now that we can fully embrace it, be out and proud nerds. So,
Yes.
so I guess that we first question I wanted to your first conversation subject. I wanted to talk about the overall vibe of the convention, and I guess we kind of were talking a little bit about it. Was it just completely like leaning into nerd culture? And within that, would you say it was mostly like science fiction, mostly fantasy, mostly epic fantasy? Like obviously with Dragonsteel, that's focused on Sanderson, but what was this like? And what were the themes there?
Yeah, I'd say definitely people were leaning into it. Like lots of people dressed up, probably not as much as you'd see at like Comic-Con or FanX or even
Mm,
Dragonsteel, but definitely people dressed up and it was not like out of place. The vibe was a bit older than I was expecting,
Okay.
having been my first convention. I feel like it felt like the average age there was like 40. Does that track for you, Stephen?
I mean, when we were talking with, so we got invited to this, by the way, by this guy's name's Jack. He's our buddy now, but he's a part of the of Norwescon, and he's trying to kind of reach out and maybe broaden the types of people that are there. And so we were chatting, and I said the average age is maybe like 45, and he said like no, I think the average age is like 60. And
Oh,
there was a broad range, but I don't know, maybe 60 might be a bit old. I'd say more like young 50s, but there were quite a lot of older folks. There were some younger as well, but I'd say if you were to pick out one random person, they're 50s.
and like so many people are saying
So,
like, oh, this is my 10th, 15th, 20th
Yeah.
year at
Yeah,
Norwescon.
lot of long
So
time attenders.
so like the age is going to be higher because of that, but also like that speaks to the culture of just like this really felt like a community thing where like everybody knew each other from past years and that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. So I was going to ask, um, did you feel like a lot of people there knew each other? Were people running into each other? Like,
Yeah, for
did
sure.
okay. And along with that, how did you guys feel as a first time people there? Did you feel like people were welcoming, receptive? What was that like?
Yeah, I think most people knew each other just from coming together or past friends, that I've gone to Norwescon for 10 years and I always meet up with my buddies, whatever. Like there are definitely groups that knew each other. That said, yeah, people were super friendly. Like the great thing about the nerd culture that we were chatting about was that people are so accepting. Maybe some of it is from like years of not being accepted themselves. Like everyone has this like empathy of like, I need to accept other people, like make sure everyone feels welcome. But honestly, I do think there's a little bit of that there, just from kind of people kind of have this shared growing up experience of maybe being outsiders and now being part of something altogether is cool. So yeah, people were super friendly to us. A lot of people were interested in the podcast. I think, a lot of it was probably, just kind of being nice, but it was nice. It was appreciated. It was just genuine. And I think, going back, like if I was to go back again next year, I'd recognize people and I'd be excited to see them and chat.
Yeah, for sure. I think that was one of the standout things for the culture for me is just how like welcoming and accepting everybody was. It was at a hotel and we were both staying at the hotel that was hosting it. And because of that, like you'd see people a lot, going up and down the elevators, you'd run into the same people over and over again. And everyone was like super friendly about it. Like Emily and Jonas came and there were a bunch of times where I was going to meet up with them where I was just leaving to go to a panel without them. And people were like, oh, I saw your son in the elevator. Like somebody that I've no idea who their name is. Like, but I've seen them in
Yeah,
the like around enough that like we knew each other that way. And that was fun.
nice.
That's cool. So about it sounds the image I'm getting is smallish, maybe like a
Yeah.
thousand people less. Like what size are we talking?
I think
I
a
have,
thousand is probably too much. It is hard to gauge because
yeah.
we didn't attend. I know there were some like keynote things that were in a larger room. We didn't attend any of those. We were just there for 2 days and we were mostly focused on the panels that we were on. Although, we did go around and get some other experiences as well. But it's hard to say what like the large, if you got everyone together, how many there would be. I'd say a few
Maybe a
hundred,
couple hundred.
maybe 300 to 500-ish. That's my guess.
Okay. Okay. Nice.
Yeah. It didn't feel crowded at all.
I guess how many cars were in the parking lot and try to go from that. Like if this was one of those
Um,
interview
Yeah, like
questions that
interview
were really
question. Yeah.
popular 10 years ago,
yeah.
you'd say,
There
okay,
were
the parking lot was
probably
always super full. How many people are in a car? And then go from there.
there were probably I'm guessing that parking lot held 300 to 400 cars. Is that too much? I'm doing 50 down the line. I don't
Yeah, I didn't
know.
spend as much time in the parking lot as you because
Yeah.
I got a
Yeah, you got a nice
pass.
spot.
Yeah, I got a nice spot from the nice hotel attendant lady.
I spent
Uh,
a lot of time trying to
yeah,
find parking in that
yeah.
parking
The
lot.
the the parking was difficult.
But
Oh man.
yeah, somewhere between 200 and 500 people, I'd say. I don't really have a great
But most were
way to
staying
estimate it.
at most were staying at the hotel. So I'm guessing that there was, kind of a fun culture of just like hanging out after hours. There, just go to the bar,
Hmm.
get drinks, whatever. Like, I think there's a lot of, friendships that started that way. So whether people went by themselves and were like making friends or meeting up with longtime friends or whatever, like, I think there's a lot of ways to have a good time with these types of things.
Yeah,
Cool.
and they had like an art exhibit and then more of a like stand room. I can't remember what they called the showroom or the vendor room.
Vendor hall. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was really cool.
You guys get any merch?
I didn't
No. Yeah, I
I
did not either.
the main like shirt for it, I really wanted to get it in long sleeve and they didn't have it and I just couldn't decide on one after that. I wanted to get a magnet, but I wasn't able to.
Hmm.
Yeah. I have a lot of this type of merch already, and I am trying to resist. So I did not get anything.
Nice.
Yeah. I always get sucked
Yeah.
into like, oh, I should get something for Jonas, but then I'm also like he's gonna grow out of it so
Yeah.
fast. So like,
Yeah.
how much do you spend on something that is for me to enjoy, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I think the coolest thing that we were looking at was there was someone who had some like semi-rare books, like not super rare, but these were
mm,
like signed Eye of the World in like the original printing hardcover.
yeah.
And there were some George R. R. Martins as well, like, really popular, well-known authors. And that was cool. That was the most tempting thing. Although maybe we were pressed for time, but like I didn't even inquire on the prices, maybe because I just like scared to know.
Yeah. I know. And then also like flying, like it's like how much room do you have to bring stuff like that back? But
Yeah, yeah. It was
Yeah.
definitely
but
a regional thing. I don't there's definitely some people who flew in for it, and I mean that hence the hotel, right? But I think most people were coming from like nearby. They probably got hotel rooms anyway, so they could stay and have a good time. But I think the idea is a lot of these cons are regional. There's a lot of cons similar to this in different parts of the country.
yeah, like there are a lot of people who were surprised we weren't from Washington.
Hmm.
Yeah,
When they'd be like, "Oh, you're from?" We're like Utah. Like, "Oh, all the way from Utah." So
yeah, yeah.
Hmm. So would you guys consider going to other cons like this? Like, would you, I mean, going as a panelist, going as a guest, like kind of any more that,
yeah,
yeah.
I would really like to. I went through waves of not worried at all about being prepared to like, oh man, like I have to get so prepared for this. And then after the first panel, I was like, oh no, this is fine. We prepared the right amount.
Yeah,
This was great.
yeah,
And it felt a lot like, when we do our podcast, which is like, I mean, we prepare, but we're not like, we don't have like a script, We're just going, we're
right,
just
right.
vibing. And I feel like that was really fun. And it was really fun, like meeting the other panelists, I thought. Like that was a fun part of this.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'd definitely be interested.
Were the other panelists, were the other content creators, were they more people just well known in the community? What was that makeup?
This was a surprising, like, kind of threw me off. Um, but they were mostly authors, right, Stephen? Like,
Hmm.
I don't know if there were any other content creator panelists. At least
Really?
not in the panels that I attended a couple other panels, and the six that I was on, there were no other content creators. So that
Wow.
seemed to be more of a unique thing to be a
and
panelist
but
based
like
on.
every other panelist we were with had published books.
Yeah.
Like, and I was feeling
A
pretty the
little bit
first
of
time.
imposter syndrome after that.
Well, just like, yeah, I mean, and I will admit, the questions I thought the questions were going to be a lot more about like stories and aspects of stories and like people sharing things they like about books they like and stuff like that. But probably 80% of the questions were like, I'm trying to get published. How do I do this? Or I'm trying to
Hmm.
write this book. How do I do this? So I will say, as much as I was like, no, we prepared enough, I think part of it was just like, there's no way I could have prepared for this
Yeah.
part. So,
There are definitely
Well,
some
and
things we
that's,
couldn't speak
yeah,
for. I
yeah,
think 80% might be a little high. There one panel especially was ended up getting really focused on publishing, but I don't think the other
yeah.
ones got nearly that level. But definitely, yeah, answering questions, there was
Yeah.
a lot of like, well, this story has XYZ. This seems like a good idea. This author has said this or this, but like it would be really cool. Like I felt like I wish that I had a book so I could say, oh, I
Yeah.
try to do this or whatever. Like I feel like I've read enough stories where like I feel totally fine like giving that type of advice and like, oh, this is a good thing to do. But there's part of me that's like, I haven't actually written anything, so like, am I really qualified to say this? I don't know.
Hmm.
I feel
Yeah.
like the majority of those book or publishing related questions, I felt we were able to kind of pivot it to be like, well, in books I really like, this is what they do, and this is
Yeah.
what I think
Yeah.
has worked for me as a reader and what hasn't worked. So it
Yeah.
was still there was only a handful of questions where I was just like, oh, pass. Like I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah,
the
yeah.
one to answer for this, but
Yeah.
And and,
And
and honestly,
let me
go ahead.
just circle back to one other point. So you were asking about other panels. Right afterwards, I looked up if there were other other cons. I looked up if there were other regional cons like this in the area because I thought it was a lot of fun. It's just the travel is kind of a lot to say like we're gonna go back here every year. Maybe in the future, like I think it was a fun one and I wouldn't mind going back to it. But it would be hard to say like we're gonna justify another trip of that magnitude just for the convention. But
yeah.
there is one other con that seems like similar vibes. It's in Provo, and it's one that like Sanderson went to when he was coming up or whatever. And I guess there was one that used to be in Salt Lake that I don't think is active anymore. Seems like there's a lot of these panels that have kind of come and gone over the years, new ones pop up, etc. So I might check out the Provo one. It's in February. I am a little concerned that like even though I'm sure Brandon has probably tried to like distance himself from owning the panel, I I mean it's in Provo. I'm gonna guess that like there's gonna be a huge just like Sandersonite vibe, which was obviously the vibe at Dragonsteel, but I mean that is their con. So like totally makes
Yeah,
Yeah.
you
sense.
want it to be. Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean I hope the con in Provo is like anything is discussed.
Yeah.
I hope there's not like a Cosmere track of panelists,
Obviously, there's probably going to be more bias towards Sanderson
Yeah,
stuff because he's a local,
right,
artist,
right,
which I
right.
think is natural. But yeah. Um,
That was one thing that
okay.
surprised me about Norwescon is uh there was very little talk of Sanderson on like at the panels
Well, that's what I was
themselves.
going to ask. I mean, I think with the people a little bit older, you know, with the average age being 50, they probably see Sanderson as more of like a new person on the scene. Whereas
Yeah,
a lot more like on Reddit or even amongst the like kind of content creators that we swim in, Sanderson's like the establishment. You know what I mean? He's like, okay, he
yeah,
kind of he in some ways he like benefited from like the 90s revolution and publishing and then also set the stage for like I feel like help set the stage for the newer batch of authors. But he's not one of the newer batch of authors for sure anymore. You know, so
Yeah, it
yeah,
was interesting. Definitely talked to fans like around, but at panels, not really like maybe name dropped to just like Sanderson's done this before, or, but I was even on a panel that was specific to fan casting Stormlight using Game of Thrones actors.
oh, that's cool.
And it was a really fun panel with two people in attendance in the audience on that one. Was really surprised everybody there. All the
yeah.
panelists were
Which
surprised.
so that one was late on Saturday night. I didn't attend because I had a flight that I was on at the point that Jake was talking.
It was
But
at
the
8
night
p.m. Not super late.
So
But
yeah,
yeah.
but the night before we had a panel that was talking about just like death in science fiction and fantasy,
Yeah.
ways to die, things
Same
about
time,
it,
right?
and it was super fun. That was probably the best panel that we were on.
Yeah.
All the other panelists were awesome. It was just a blast, and it was packed. The room was
Yeah.
full of people, and so it's pretty
Okay.
surprising that same time the next night, no one.
Yeah. That
Well,
was probably the most fun panel. You're right. Go ahead,
well,
Josh.
let's you I see Stephen, you sent a list of these panels. Let's kind of run through the panels and so today I started listening. Somebody in our library has what is it? The Anthropocene Reviewed book by John Green. where he gives a 1 to 5 star rating for like just reviewing life. And so I was reading
That's
that today.
funny.
Ha- I thought it might be you, Jake,
No, it
but I don't
wasn't.
know.
No.
Yeah, the Anthropocene Reviewed Essays on Human-Centered Planet. Anyway, it's fun. So in that vein, I wanted you to give a brief explanation of the panel and then rate it 1 to 5 stars, completely arbitrarily.
So rating it on our experience there or
Yeah, how you
the
think the panel
idea
went. Yeah,
or
so
how we did?
each one of the
What's
panels just
what's the connection to the book? I feel like I missed something there. Like I don't know what the book
Just
is.
the rating 1 to 5.
the book he goes through and he rates like random things like on a scale of 1 to 5, and he'll write
Oh,
like
okay.
he'll go through like in it's like super huge things like the internet to like Diet Dr. Pepper, and he
Okay.
spends
Okay.
like a chapter talking
Five
about
out of
like giving
five.
you some background. Yeah,
Five
Yeah.
out of
yeah,
Yeah.
five.
Yeah.
No
yeah,
Okay.
notes.
Okay. I like it. I like it. Yeah.
yeah. So it's a fun book. You guys should read it. It's in Libby right now. So,
Hmm.
um, but
That'd be
speaking
fun.
of bullying, when he was a kid, people would just come up and put like wet garbage on his head at the beginning of every class. We were talking about bullying a little bit before this,
Ooh.
and it's
He's from
like,
he went to high school in like the 80s, early 90s, right? Like
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
yeah, I've seen The Breakfast Club. Yeah,
I
I know what
know,
happened
Yeah.
back then.
but,
So that
but
really happened
yeah, yeah. He said there's one class where
in
he
real
would get
life,
there.
not just the Breakfast Club.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he said there was a class where it was like out in a trailer, and the teacher, it took them like 5 minutes to get out there, so the teacher was like 5 minutes late, and like pretty much every day some people would just like bring wet trash and put it on him before class would get started, and would just sit there. And
Dang.
anyway, now he's probably more successful than any of them, so
Yeah.
Hmm.
It definitely
yeah,
does give that vibe though. The wet trash head vibe.
yeah.
Just kidding.
As in, like you personally want to put trash on John Green's head,
No, no,
or
it's just
that he gives the vibe that that's happened to him in the past.
that, yeah, that one. I mean, if you were to say this, someone got wet trash put on their head today, his is a face that would pop up under that
Okay.
wet trash.
Man, man, 1 out of 5 stars, Jake, for
One
that
out of
one.
five. All right. As a
All right.
joke, 5 out of 5.
Yeah, I like the joke. I don't really, honestly, I don't really know I haven't read any of John Green's books. I know
Me neither.
I kind of have the vibe of what they are, but
I more watch
okay.
him on YouTube.
Yeah.
Um, all right, all right. Panel one: bad adaptations. Uh, let's just spend like a minute or two talking about each of these and give it a rating. And yeah.
Yeah. Let's just alternate Jake between like,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, bad adaptations. This one was based off of, maybe I'm not the one to do this because I haven't watched Avatar, but in the Avatar cartoon, from what I understand, there's a certain town, city
Bossing Say,
where,
the
yeah,
capital of the Earth Kingdom.
Boston.
okay, Boston City, capital, yep, there we go. Capital of the Earth Kingdom. Yeah, Josh loves Avatar as well. I'm definitely not the one to talk about this, but there, no one was allowed to like talk about the war that was going on to the point where like it didn't even exist. And so the idea of this one was like, what adaptations or what movies or TV shows would you prefer never existed? And then we kind of
Like
went
no
from
one's
there.
allowed to talk about these, so we can just erase them from
Okay,
our
yeah, yep,
psyches.
yep, that's
And
it.
and
Yep.
with Avatar being the premier example of
Yeah,
a
which is why,
terrible adaptation.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think the
Yeah.
panel is called "There Is No Movie in Bossing Say" or something like that.
Okay, nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
What
So
movie did you I went with Artemis Fowl because I ranted about that in like an episode we did like 300 episodes ago or so. It was like I went back to listen to it. It was like episode 60 or something like that. It was a terrible movie, and it was a childhood story that I really liked. Jake brought up Wheel of Time, although you did say that season 3 was better.
I did. Yeah.
A little harsh to say that you wish it never even existed.
Man.
We've talked
That's
about this on the podcast. I brought this up before.
Yeah, yeah.
Seasons 1 and 2. I'm debatable. I'm not
out
debatable.
of
It's debatable to me. I guess I'm debatable
out
still.
of all the terrible adaptations, though, I feel like Wheel of Time is
Oh
not.
yeah,
Okay.
but it's not top
You
of the
gotta
list. But like
You have
I
to
haven't.
choose something that other people haven't
Yeah.
chosen.
So in
Yeah.
Aragon and Avatar: The Poster Childs, those have been taken. I never saw the Artemis Fowl movie. I read some of those books, but I read them too late. So I was never like into them.
The Hobbit was
Yeah,
discussed for a while.
The Hobbit.
That one
Which,
got
man,
a lot of discussion.
Yeah.
Rings of Power
honestly,
got brought up a little bit.
this isn't fantasy book, but I go with Halo. I'd go with Halo for
Yeah,
sure.
I think there was
Man,
some.
I saw that a mile away.
Yeah,
Really? I
there
mean,
was a specific
uh,
question about video games, and I think
okay.
Yeah.
Halo
Yeah.
got brought up.
Halo is
And then the
it's just one of those where yeah, it just ruined. I don't know, man. It just ruins any chance of ever getting a good adaptation made, and it just not.
that's
It's
and
just like
that's
an adaptation in name only, you know.
that's kind of the main point of the thing, and that's like what my argument with Wheel of Time is. I don't know if it has crossed that threshold or not. Season three has really redeemed it in so many ways. So, but at the end of season two, that was my thought process. But the panel wasn't just about
Yeah,
adaptations that you wish were like bale-fired and never existed, but also just critiquing adaptations in general.
yeah.
Hmm.
It was a lot
There
of
was a
fun.
guy. There was a guy there whose whole podcast is just about the adaptations.
Ink to
He was,
film.
yeah, he was
Oh,
very
cool.
qualified for this
Yeah.
panel, and he had
And then
like
there's
a rubric that he used for everything.
and the other panelist, one of the other panelists was a VFX guy, and he had worked on a lot of the movies, um, which was cool. So he's an author, but he had before being an author, he had worked as a VFX guy in Hollywood. So that was cool. Did he say he worked on Aragon? Which one was he talking about? They worked on that he was really disappointed by. Was it?
Yeah. What
It was
was
it
it?
was an edit. Oh, it was League of Extraordinary Gentlemen because he loved the comics, and then he worked on the movie and was just like
Yeah.
disappointed by every decision that was made as it was being put together. Yeah, that was a
Yeah.
really cool perspective from him.
Yeah.
Hmm. I feel like as a 10-year-old kid or whenever that movie came out, I thought that movie was awesome. I'd be interested to see how it holds up on a rewatch. All right.
According to him, it's awful.
All right,
Yeah,
one to five.
it ended Sean Connery's career. I would say this one was it was solid four. I thought it came out of the gate swinging and got me excited
Yeah.
for the rest of the panels.
This was the one I think that we were going in, we were the most nervous about because we just felt the moderator had set out a list of a bunch of things, and we were looking at it and we're like, I don't know if we can speak to all of these things, but it ended up being fine. The moderator did a great job, and I think
Yeah.
everyone had a lot to say. So yeah, I think 4 out of 5.
Awesome. All right, the next one I see is fantasy subgenres.
So this was just discussing subgenres within science fiction and fantasy. And this is one where I kind of thought it would, I think we both thought it would be like discussing pros and cons of the genres, what they do
Yeah.
well. But it turned out to mostly be how do we write a story within a genre? And then also, should we try to stick to a genre? Should we not? Like, how do you like leverage a genre and subgenre within science fiction and fantasy in order to get published, things like that. So this one
Mhm.
kind of the opposite where I was like, oh, we got this in the bag. We read a lot of science fiction and fantasy, but it ended up being like not even subgenres. It was like genre in general discussions and mostly related to writing and publishing.
Yeah.
So
And
Hmm.
there was one lady who had been an editor, worked in publishing for a long time, written some of her own stuff, and she just had like such a great perspective on all these things. And so, she gave some good answers, and then the audience just kind of like started asking her questions. And
yeah,
yeah, like that
what's
this is one I just felt like kind of disappointed in my own performance. Like I felt like maybe I should have said more or I could have been a little more clever, like something. I mean, looking back, I think the panel for the viewers was great because she gave awesome responses and there was a lot of good information. But as far as like my contribution to the panel, I was disappointed. This was probably my weakest panel.
Hmm.
yeah,
Okay.
I'd say the same. Was this one the Marine author was on as well?
Yeah.
There's a guy
Yeah.
he had a
Yeah,
big personality. He was
yeah,
really
yeah.
fun. He had served as a Marine, and he says his like catchphrase is he's an author, is he writes fantasy books for people who like submarine novels. So he kind of is
And he
trying
said,
to fill
I'm the
that.
only author who's performed all the
Yeah,
stunts that I write
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, he says when he's writing stunts, he'll
Yeah.
like if there's like a horse stunt, he'll like try to like figure out how to do it on the horse and like he
Yeah.
has fencing experience and stuff like that. So um he was
Sounds like an awesome guy.
he was
He,
like a lot of fun. A lot
he's a
of
fun
yeah.
guy. He definitely like dominated the conversation. Like his personality was really big.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
between the other ladies, just really good responses, and his just kind
Yeah.
of like, aura of sucking in a lot of the conversation. Uh yeah, there wasn't a whole lot for us to
Yeah.
contribute, but I probably came away from it thinking like, good job, other panelists. I'm
Yeah.
glad that I was here.
And who was the other one on that panel with us? Because we were on all panels of five. I don't remember,
Yeah,
but
I hope yeah, it's gonna
they
be hard to remember everyone.
they were the
And
main people who spoke on it though. Um,
yeah.
one cool thing he did bring up is that his current, I think his best-selling series right now came about because the story he wrote in college and tried to get published never got picked up, and so then he was trying to write a sequel to it. And then as he was writing the sequel, he was trying to come up with someone who'd be a good antagonist for the his main character in this book that never got published. And then while writing that, he's like, "Wait, this character is way more interesting than the character in the first book." And I just thought that was a cool moment of like how the writing process can go sometimes. So he never published that first book, but the series he has published came about from trying to
Hmm.
just create a character for that same story. So,
Hmm. Okay.
but
So are we going what rating are we going for the fantasy subgenres panel?
solid 3 out of 5 for me.
Okay.
Yeah. I would
Not
give
bad
my
at all.
I would give my I'm trying to be a little harsher in my ratings just across the board. I feel like most books, if I don't
Mhm.
like them, I
Mhm.
don't ever like rate them lower than a 7 for whatever reason. Like I need to be a
Come
little,
to the dark side.
I need to use all the points in the scale. I can't
Yes.
just like dismiss so many of them because it would be mean
Yeah.
to use those
Yeah.
points. So my personal performance, 2 out of 5. But I think the panel itself was probably really entertaining and informative for
Yeah.
the other panelists. So I'm going to say the panel was a 4 out of 5, but like how much of the 4 stars did I contribute? Maybe like 0.25 stars.
Yeah, I'm not
Okay.
as harsh with our participation, but definitely like for me it was like a 3 out of
Well,
5.
Stephen, just let me put this out there. As a good panelist is somebody that knows when to contribute and knows when to let others contribute.
Yeah, yeah,
True,
that's fair.
true.
So if you would have, if you know, I think that you did what a good panelist would do in that situation is,
Yeah. But I guess I just like wish I was in a situation where I had more to say.
but you were, yeah, I'm just saying you were assigned that situation and you did the best thing you could
Yeah,
do in that situation,
fair enough.
right?
Fair enough.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Uh,
Don't take the bad rating away from me, Josh. I have to be able to do the
Oh
bad
yeah.
ratings.
Yeah.
all right. Well,
Yeah.
maybe death and science fiction and fantasy will get a worse rating from you. What was that one about, Stephen?
No, this one was the best panel. This is
Okay.
I'm giving this one a 5 out of 5
Ooh.
stars. We had the other panelists, there were two other authors that were very funny and engaging, and I think they were buddies. They seemed like they'd been buddies for a while. And
Yeah.
so they had some good back and forth. I felt like
They're
Jake and I
awesome.
were both like jumping in. And then the other guy on there was Carl from Tor. He's like a senior editor over there, and
Yeah.
he had a lot to say. I was actually the moderator of this panel. So it was a little bit different experience. So I didn't have to say as much, but I had to, make sure that we were filling the time and everything. And I thought it went really well. Like I really enjoyed
Yeah.
this panel.
I forgot that you had moderated this one, so maybe you are patting yourself on the back a little bit, but your moderation skills, 5 out of 5. The panel,
Yeah,
five out
no.
of five. Audience enjoyment, 5 out of 5. So this is a 15.
Heck
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. So did you get any insights into death, like into how it could be used better, like
There was
when
some,
to use it? Yeah.
yeah, surprisingly, not as many people talked about Severance, but there are so many Severance-esque stories that were brought up. The Carl guy from Tor was talking about a book that's coming out. I can't remember if it's later this year or next year, where the premise is when you immigrate into another country, you physically stay behind, but a like new version of you immigrates. So then there are
Hmm.
two of you, and it's kind of like Severance, where like they have their new world experiences, and you have your old world experiences. But then if they immigrate back, you get recombined. And the book is about someone who's been recombined and how they're so unhappy because half of them is mourning. You don't get like it's not a perfect process. So you still only have space for one mind. So there's two halves of you that are mourning the loss of half their lives' memories. Anyways, so that was like the death of like your mind in a way. And I thought that was a really cool
It's interesting.
idea. Yeah.
Cool.
The thing that stuck with me from this, I don't remember who said this, but there was some talk about like when children get older and kind of like come
Yeah.
to their like their more adult self, there's this like mourning of the child, and then there's the emergence of the adult person, and that is like that's something that both the person, the child to adult experiences, but also the parents experience like as they kind of like mourn the loss of their child, but also like enjoy the new person that has now emerged. And obviously this like gradual process, but like I just thought that idea was super interesting.
I
Yeah.
like it. Yeah,
Yeah, there's
that's
lots
interesting.
lots of mostly science fiction looks at death, but really cool ways. There's a Mickey
Yeah.
17 reference as well a couple
Mhm.
times. So
Nice.
cool.
Huh. Okay. Yeah, a lot of cool ways to play with the idea of death and like the theme of death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. What about terraforming or changing humans?
Yeah, so this was I think the intent behind this panel was to talk about different ways to explore terraforming planets and like science fiction and fantasy for space exploration versus changing humans themselves to be fit for whatever environment they're colonizing. I think it mostly stayed on the terraforming aspect more than anything. And this was another one that I think was heavy on like writing and like if you were an
Mhm.
author, there were, like I said, all the other panelists were authors. And that's where most of it turned to. But this is a topic that I feel like this was like an exercise in control for me of just like knowing just to let other people talk because they have like they're actually writers, so they've written this, but like man, I would have loved to like moderate this one. I had so many things I wanted to say, and like so many times I was like, no, I'll let this conversation go and then see if there's a dead space, then I'll bring up something else. I really enjoyed it. 4 out of 5.
Yeah, I knew this was gonna be right in your wheelhouse, Jake. Not
Yeah.
as much for me because I just don't read as many of these stories. It's kind of geared more science fiction than fantasy, and I'm more on the fantasy side. But I think that we did, at least I felt that I did a lot better in this one. Like you said, it was mostly author writing type of questions, but there was a decent number of also just like general story discussions. A lot of the stories were older stories that, and this kind of goes back to the just
Hmm.
like the general age of the audience. A lot of like older things were discussed. But I think I remember bringing up like a few newer stories, and like I think I brought up the Bobiverse and
And
what was
Roshar, I
another?
think. Did you?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Did we just like talk? Yeah, I think I talked about how like fantasy is kind of like newer fantasy is kind of encroaching on the science fiction space where it's like really science fiction masquerading as fantasy. I thought that was a good one.
Good
So
point.
yeah, I think yeah, solid 4 out of 5 panel. I think there were a lot of interesting things brought up, covered a wide range of things, and personally, I contributed more than 0.25 stars.
That's good. Did anybody bring up Speaker for the Dead? That's like my man. That was
Ah,
a
I remember
formative
thinking
one.
about it, but I can't remember if someone brought it up or not. Um, yeah, like there are so many
There's so
ways to
many.
discuss this
Yeah.
one.
I
Um,
I just remember when I was a kid reading that book being like so blown away by it.
that
Um,
the twist in that book is one of the best twists I've ever read. I need to revisit that series because these are ones that like middle school and high school me just loved, and I hope they hold
Yeah,
up. But
I think they do. I started reading um the Shadow books
Mhm.
a few years ago, and I enjoyed them too. But maybe you should do for Fantology, do some of these. Um,
We
all
We
right.
did spend a little bit of time also talking about the aspect of changing humans rather than terraforming a planet, and kind of got into cyborgs and stuff. And I think we brought up Murderbot. And
yeah.
and they mentioned that Martha Wells is going to be at Worldcon, and Worldcon is like the biggest science fiction and fantasy. As far as like cons that are community organized and focused on writing, there's a big difference between community organized. This is kind of what I've learned in attending. I mean, what experience do I have really? Like I've attended three cons, but pretty sure this is accurate. There's a big difference between these community organized type cons and these like event driven cons, FanX,
Right.
Comic Con, right?
Right.
Even like honestly, even Dragonsteel, that is not a
Yeah,
community
that's
con.
it's
That
not.
is
Yeah.
a organization putting on their own con. It's focused mostly on science fiction fantasy, but it's different. And so Worldcon is like the biggest of these community organized. It travels around the world, obviously. This is where they vote to award the Hugos, like this big controversy that happened a couple of years ago over in China with R.F.
Mhm.
Kuang's books. Like this is all coming from Worldcon. Anyway, Worldcon is in Seattle later this year.
Oh,
I think in September, November, sometime towards the end of the fall. And Martha Wells is the guest of honor there. So that was a big tangent, but that was kind of a fun thing as well.
cool. Nice. Maybe we can make it up there. That'll be fun.
That would be
Um,
fun to attend, yeah. I
yeah.
think I feel like there'll be a point in my life where it's in Utah. Everything is coming to Utah nowadays. And I might
Yeah.
be in Utah for like the immediate future, so we'll see.
Yeah. I wouldn't be able to go. That's when we're gonna have a new baby at that point. So that'll be too crazy for me this year. But
Yeah.
all right. What about ensemble casts? Panel five.
Yeah, I guess I just talked a lot and it's my turn to introduce the swing and I'll try to do
Yeah.
that quick. Okay, so ensemble cast, the idea was like just talk about stories where there is an ensemble group of cast, Lord of the Rings being like the prime example, right? Like what makes these stories work? What's the number of people you want? How do you make it more than just like a D&D party? Because I think we like get the idea that, oh, there should be different types of people in the party, but like that's fairly basic, but like go past that in the discussion.
Hmm.
This was another one that turned more writing than I anticipated in the preparation, but I feel like we had a lot more we could talk about.
Mhm.
There were the other three, I think were authors on this one as well. Um,
I think so. I don't remember who all was on this one, but
yeah,
yeah, I
The
remember
British guy was on this one, I'm pretty sure.
oh, that's right.
Um, he had a really good,
His books sounded interesting. Like
yeah,
he
they're called
said,
New Rock, New Roll. It's the name
yeah,
of,
based
yeah.
off of like his own enjoyment of RPG type of games. Oh, we should have brought up that in that deaths panel, there was one of the other authors was
Oh
like this
yeah,
huge Baldur's Gate fan. So we were talking to him
yeah,
about Baldur's Gate 3 afterwards. And anyway,
yeah.
but yeah,
Nice. Nice.
same type of, this is the fun thing about these cons. Like everyone is a nerd.
A lot of
Yeah,
shared
Yeah.
lot
interests.
of shared interests. Yeah, yeah.
But this one talked a lot about like I thought it'd be like what are your favorite ensemble casts and why? But it was more so like how do you make sure you're writing an ensemble cast where like you're giving enough time to people, like how many's too big, how many's like what are examples of them done well in terms of writing? Um, and an interesting question somebody from the audience asked is uh they're saying they have an ensemble cast, but they feel like one of the characters like doesn't have anything to do anymore. Like
Hmm.
don't really have
Hmm.
a purpose in the story. And so there was talk of like,
This is when
how do you get
the death,
yeah, well,
Yeah.
yeah, it was like,
Kill
do
them
they
see the
have a
off.
death,
purpose
see the death
later
panel.
on? If not, then yeah, see the death panel.
Yeah,
But also
yeah.
like how do you if they do have a purpose later on, like what are good storytelling techniques to like uh exclude
Get them
them,
out of this.
get
Yeah.
them out of here for now and
Eh,
save them for later, which is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like there's sometimes when that's done really poorly, you see one of Sanderson's big hit, I think kind of big mess ups in the Stormlight Archive. I don't want to spoil it, but um, and I think it's the biggest thing that's wrong with Words of Radiance. We'll just go with that. Um, but yeah,
You're thinking of a character that's missing during that, or
I know
I'm not.
I know exactly who's talking
I'm
about.
not. I'm not sure what you're referencing.
it's a character that is dead in quotes.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
because basically to get their character to not be with them anymore. Like
Yeah,
it just
yeah,
kind of
yeah, yeah.
seems
We
like
get
that
it. We
was
get
the
it. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah,
I don't
yeah.
want to.
No,
I don't want to get into
Uh,
that's
spoilers.
what I was also
that's what you're thinking.
referencing.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool. Okay, yeah.
yeah.
But I feel like that's kind of an example of it done poorly, where like somebody in the ensemble cast needs to go do something else, so you just kind of
Mm,
take a character off the board
I mean,
without.
same type of thing. Similar vibes happen in well, another popular series, another very
Yes,
popular series
that's
that
what I was just
yeah.
thinking too.
I don't know that that's done poorly, but yeah. Jake, you know
Yeah,
what I'm referencing here. I mean, this is like the thing. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
okay.
Yeah. Um
I mean, are we talking
yeah,
spoilers
yeah,
or
yeah,
not?
we're not
Yeah.
gonna do spoilers. We're not gonna do spoilers. Okay. I think was it you that brought up the what was the stand like or Stephen King's advice of
Oh
like
yeah,
just throw a
Oh
bomb in
yeah,
it and
just throw a bomb in
yeah,
it.
see what yeah just
yeah,
if you feel like your party your group or whatever doesn't know what to do just like mess it all
yeah,
up and see what happens.
Wait, Jake, did you say that at the convention?
yeah,
That's
yeah,
that's one of my favorite things where I really don't. I've never fact check it, but I love the
yeah.
quote, so I really hope it's true. But yeah,
Um, yeah, I'm reading off and on writing by Stephen King, and I swear he mentioned it. Maybe he didn't. I don't know. I could
I
be
hope it's true.
hallucinating that factoid. We all
Jake
got a
GPT.
little, yeah, we all got a little chat GPT in us. Um,
Nice.
yeah,
All
it
right.
was fun. I'd say this one was another 4 out of 5, maybe 3.5 since it's not as stand out as some of the other ones, but it was fun.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I could knock it down a half point. Honestly, for me, the mo most of them were about the same level. I feel like the subgenres one was just a little bit lower. We already discussed that. The death one was awesome. The other three, bad adaptations, terraforming, and ensemble, probably about the same mid. And then the next one, and this will kind of like lead in, was really pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's disability in science fiction and fantasy. Yeah. Well, we can
Yeah.
do ratings for this one. We are kind of low on time, so we can you can move quickly through it.
Yeah. Is it my turn to explain?
Yeah.
Well,
It's,
It is your turn.
it's
Yeah.
okay. It was just discussing how disability is presented in science fiction and fantasy writing. I think it became more of disability in writing in general, which a lot of these did, but then
Yeah.
also all the other panelists besides Stephen and I were authors, and all the other panelists were disabled. And so most of it I felt was about like writing, like being an author, and like
Yeah.
how the disability affects like the storytelling, which was a cool premise, but the moderator
Yeah.
was
The moderator did not do a good job by any stretch of the imagination. I'm sorry that
yeah,
I can't get around. It was really a terrible job.
yeah,
But I feel like the mix up was part of the title was something like disability in writing, and the word agency was in the title somewhere. I don't know exactly what the title was. I'm thinking, did maybe the moderator like take agency to mean like getting agents in your writing? Because there were like
maybe,
several kind of weird questions where he
yeah,
asked about like how do you navigate the writing space, like trying to get an agent when you're disabled? Like, have you found that that's easy? And he just like kept on like hammering at this point,
yeah,
and like no one had anything else to say, and it was kind of like already an awkward. Like, I guess it's a little interesting to talk about like you know how interested are people in actually like reading about disability? Like, I think that's an interesting discussion to have. But it was just like over and over again, and like we tried to get it more like let's talk about what makes this the disability work in stories and there was some interesting discussion, and then he like kept on derailing it, and I was really
Some
frustrated by the end.
One of the least offensive things he did was like we all introduced each ourselves, and like in my introduction I was like, I'm not an author, I'm not part of the disabled community, but like yeah, but I'm a panelist here. But he kept asking me questions about, and that's the thing, as a moderator, he'd ask the panelists direct questions rather than like
Yeah,
putting a question
Open.
up in the air
yeah,
and let
you don't want to
um
do that.
but he kept asking me questions about being an author and about how like my disability affects that. And like like I swear I said like three different times,
I
like
have
I'm not an
neither.
author, I'm not
Yeah,
like this, you're not like listening. And then
yeah.
um oh, what else I was gonna oh, and then at one point Stephen had enough and was like basically took control and asked his own questions as the moderator.
Well,
Oh,
so the track lead was in the audience, and I think I got the vibe that she kind of set this one up and was really invested and wanted this
yeah.
to go well, and she was like really frustrated by it, and she apologized to all of us afterwards. But she asked some questions because she was trying to get it back on track, and we had, we all kind of responded to him, and it was interesting. And then this guy tries to like go back to his like awkward questions,
Yeah.
and I'm like, actually, like let's talk about this a little bit more. And
Yeah.
it
It was
kept on going,
awesome.
like it got a little bit longer on it, but like that was that kind of redeemed it because I felt like we were able to like bring up a few things, but this was something like, as a disabled person, like this is something that's really important to me, and so like I wanted this panel to go well
Yeah.
as well, and so like I was fairly frustrated afterwards, like come
Yeah.
on, man, like yeah,
Yeah,
Totally valid. And like Steven said, like she apologized afterwards. Like, and everyone who from Norwescon who was there who like witnessed it was super apologetic. The guy, the guy, like he was older. He served in Vietnam, and I think he had good intentions, but was just not educated on how to speak about these kind of things, and
yeah,
not didn't have great moderation skills, unfortunately.
yeah, no ill intent,
Yeah,
but
but basically
yeah,
as bad as it could go without ill intent, honestly.
yeah, I felt
Um,
like even afterwards, I felt that like he was oblivious to the fact
oh
that it
yeah, I don't
was
think he,
a
yeah, I don't,
disaster. Yeah.
yeah. And bummer because you had to leave, like you had to go directly from that panel to the airport.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like
sour
bummer
note
to
to
end
end
on that
on.
note.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Little selfish of me, but my own personal frustration with this panel was this was the only one Emily was able to attend, but we didn't have like childcare or anything, so Jonas came too. And I don't know. I've got my parent goggles on, so Stephen, help me stay close to the truth. But he was watching a show. He started to sing Baba Black Sheep. He wasn't screaming, like he was in the back. I didn't feel personally as a parent that it was disruptive, but they got kicked out because of that.
Oh man.
No, and no like no attempts to like, oh, what can we do to help him? It was just like, oh, you guys have to leave, which I was annoyed at, but
Yeah.
again,
I
it's completely
wasn't
separate.
paying super close attention because I was like really
Yeah.
distracted by
Yeah. The
what,
train
what was
wreck happening
what was
on stage.
unfolding. Yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah, it did like I was not distracted by it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Man,
I don't know.
yeah. Let's have a panel about being inclusive, and then do the most offensive things possible and kick out
Yeah.
anytime and a parent that's trying to, attend, kick the kids out too. That's
Yeah.
rough, man. That's
Jack
rough.
was really cool about it afterwards as well. He was like, yeah, but it is one of those things where I feel like if she was able to attend any of the other panels, like the vibe would have been a lot like no one would have even noticed, you
People might
know?
have already been high strung and yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
the
it was
fact
a
that
more
like
serious,
everyone was already super like tense
yeah,
and it was just like super quiet, like everyone
yeah.
was like, "What's the next?" And he like he just didn't talk very loudly. He was kind of
Yeah.
slow in speaking, and so it was just like
Oh man.
everyone was like, "What is going to happen next?"
Yeah.
And so yes, so Jonas kind of babbling in the back was just
Yeah.
maybe a little uh I don't know, more louder or than would be. And
Yeah.
like if this was during the deaths panel, like everyone was kind of like
Oh,
laughing the whole time
yeah.
and having
It would
a
have been,
whatever,
yeah.
yeah,
But
yeah.
and then
Rough.
there's one more panel after that like we mentioned, Steven had to go home and it was just me on. It was the fan casting. It was called The Way of Thrones. So it's fan casting Stormlight Archive characters using Game of Thrones actors, with the caveat of only using Game of Thrones actors at the age they were during the Game of Thrones series, which really threw me because I wanted
Hmm.
Pedro Pascal as Dalinar. I thought that would have been a really good Dalinar, but he had to be younger. And I
He
can't remember
could,
who he cast him as.
yeah, dang.
He might have been, oh man, I wish I remembered all the casting. We talked about so many
So
roles,
you
but
went through,
You,
Jack said he had visuals, right? So you went through the actors one by one and you said
we
which
actually
Stormlight character is this actor?
the visuals were not able to come to light, unfortunately. But
Mm,
yeah, we went through instead. We went through Stormlight characters, and we're like, okay, who do we think would be a good cast for that? And then we try to like lock them in soft. Some standouts were Wit was Tyrion,
oh, that would
and
be,
then actually, I think that's what we landed on. There was some debate whether Peter Littlefinger could be a good Wit. I think he's got the look there, but maybe a little too old looking, and just he's just so evil in that. I think we did Peter
yeah.
as Amaram. This is one that we recorded the audio, and if it came out well, we'd like to publish, but we'll see how that goes.
Okay.
And by we recorded, Norwescon recorded it for us, and so we're waiting to see if they're able to
huh,
get it to us. Um, this one was a lot of fun. I would
dang.
say
This one does sound
four out
fun.
of 4 out of 5 in terms of enjoyment. The only thing that brought it down was there were only 2 people in the audience, which was unfortunate, but it also made it so like basically all of us were just talking as a big group. So we had 2 extra panelists, which was fun.
That's cool.
Okay.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, who else? What are some other good ones we had? Um,
I feel like Pedro Pascal, he could do a good job as like a villain in the Stormlight, like as either Sadius or like even like
yeah,
Odium or something, like just channeling his like Wonder Woman, kind of
yeah.
like like over the top, hamming it up as the villain. I think he could do a fun
Mm.
job in there.
I think we
Uh,
did. Speaking of Odium, are we doing full spoilers for Stormlight here?
no,
I don't know
no,
what we're
why would
doing.
we be
Okay.
doing full spoilers for?
I don't
Yeah,
know. Because that's as the panel went. Um, well then
Was
I
that
won't
was
say the
that
casting.
was that divulged?
It was,
Like,
yeah,
yeah,
it
okay.
was.
well, if we publish it,
Uh,
we'll
Um,
yeah, if we link to it or
yeah.
whatever,
Well, no, we'll
people will
definitely.
link.
Maybe
Yeah,
that's why only 2 people were there. People hadn't
maybe
finished Wind and Truth yet and didn't want to
no,
come. Or...
I think the panel started. It was supposed to be just Wave Kings,
Oh,
but
okay.
because the people there had already read it, like it was fine.
Oh, I see.
Um, and we kept forgetting to like cast more House of Dragons people in there. I think
oh yeah.
Rhaenys was Navani though.
Oh,
Um,
Oh, yeah, that'd be great.
and then Damon, who is Damon?
Allison could be a good Shalon actually.
We did Daenerys as Shallan, but Alicent, yeah, would have been a good Shallan.
Daenerys was Shalott. You didn't just go with the automatic Sansa
Oh,
as
we
Shalott?
discussed it. We discussed it, but
I feel like
Sansa
that's
didn't have the right
automatic.
vibe. The hair, yes, but I mean,
Yeah.
Daenerys has
It's a yeah.
more range as an actress from what I've
Hmm.
seen.
Yeah,
Um,
That's
Emilia Clarke versus
yeah. But yeah,
Sophie
Allison could be
Turner.
better. Could be
Sophie
better
Turner.
than both.
Yeah, Allison would.
Yeah.
She could do a good job. I mean, we haven't seen her
Um,
happy very much, but
oh,
Have
and
we
then
seen we haven't seen really anyone very happy
that's true.
during George
yeah,
R. R. Martin stories.
Good point.
I think we did adult Rhaenyra as Yasna as well.
She would be good.
I can't remember who
Hmm.
did Damon for it. We talked so much. Like Pedro Pascal was cast as so many different characters at like any given point. It was really hard to lock in. But
Yeah,
Nice.
Matt Smith could also cover a wide range of characters.
yeah, we
He
definitely
could be a
cast him
good
as
Dalinar,
somebody.
actually.
Hmm.
Davos was Teft. I thought that was a really good casting there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Um,
solid. I like that.
It was a good
yeah.
one.
Who'd you have for Kaladin?
Um, Kit Harington was the first choice, but we ended up. I
Mm.
think maybe Damon was Kaladin. Was that who we did for Kaladin?
Kit Harington is the appropriate level of moodiness.
I feel like you could even
But
go.
he's a little. I think Damon has that moodiness too, though. And by Damon, Matt Smith,
Yeah.
and he's a little older.
Mm.
Um, or he feels more mature. Where it's like they're all old enough, but
Sure.
as actors.
Yeah.
That reminds me, I think Sir Kristen was Adolin, actually.
Oh man, he would do a good job.
Yeah. Okay. Very different type of character. So as
I
long
mean,
as
we
the
are,
actor can cover that range,
yeah,
but like,
Not
yeah,
that
the
different of a type. I mean, kind of, but
he's the
it's
pretty
also
boy knight,
Pretty
you
Boy
know?
Knight. Yeah,
but in
very
different ways.
Yeah, very
yes,
different ways.
Pretty
Yeah,
like Adolin is just like the nicest guy around,
yeah,
and yeah,
yeah, yeah. Nice.
Christian is not.
I think we might need to do a whole episode on this because this sounds like a lot of fun. Maybe one of our like draft
yeah.
episodes where we have to draft people and then
Oh, a draft would be so fun for casting.
yeah, where you can
Oh, I
pick like
like
three
that.
series. You can pick like three
Yeah,
series and then cast them or something.
Yeah,
All right. Well,
yeah, yeah.
before we get too off, from the panel, just wrap up thoughts of a whole like that we did whole kind of panel whole con thoughts, but just anything you guys want to wrap up and say before we close out here.
yeah. Really appreciated being reached out to by Jack. I had a great time. I think this originally for me was like, oh, why not? Let's try it. And if anything, an excuse to go to Seattle. And now I was like, I'm glad I really went for the panel itself more than anything, and would love to do something like that again.
Nice.
Yeah, probably similar feelings. Like I'd never been to Seattle before, and it was cool to like, have that acknowledgement of like, hey, someone else thinks we're like good
Yeah,
at this. Like, that's cool. So we're
still
like,
don't
yeah, I
understand
should,
that part.
yeah, well, right, yeah, yeah. It's like, yeah, what the heck, we'll go. And yeah, had a great time. Got to meet my goal going in. I could care less if Fantology gets more interest or whatever. I was just hoping to be able to contribute to the conversation, stretch myself a little bit more with a new experience, and meet some people and just kind of like, enjoy an event like this. And I think all goals were totally met. So, yeah, great time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for listening. Come swing by on Discord. We talk a lot about Fantology or about fantasy works, science fiction works. Um, and like, comment, subscribe on YouTube, share. And thanks for joining me, Stephen and Jake. And yeah, until next time, I'll talk to you later.
Yeah.
All right. See you later, nerds.